So first we will see about what is database. So if we see the real-time example, okay, so if you go for any application, three layers should be there. So first one is we can call as a application layer. 1 minute. Okay, so first this is called as application layer. This is application. So application ante, for example, if we go for any banking application or any portal, right? So any financial application, so we will do or some transaction, right? We will enter some data or we will retrieve some data, right? Also we will register some data. So if we go for some websites, it will ask for the registration. So we will enter all your personal data, phone number, contact details, right? So that data will be provided through UI application. So this is called client. Okay, so whatever data we are passing from application, that will be stored in some database. That will be stored in some database. There's something wrong. Okay. Right. So we have an application. This is called an application, that is called UI, and we have some database. Database is nothing but a storage area. So whatever transactions we are doing from the application side, that data will be stored on the database side. So basically what is database? If you go for any software or any application, these two layers are mandatory. Okay, so one is whatever the way we can do the transaction, the UI is required, and also whatever data we are passing from that application, that data should be stored in some place, that is called as a storage area. Storage area, in normal terminology we can call it the storage area. That is also called as database. And these are the basic two layer. One is application layer and another is database layer. If it is a web application, in between these two there is one more layer called web server. Web server, this is one more layer, and also called application server. This is also one more layer. Application server, web server and application server. So basically it will start from the UI, and whatever transaction we are doing from the UI, that will be updating or inserting, everything will happen on the database side. And data, this is a basically data storage area, and between these two there will be another layer called as a web server or application server. So each component has its own functionality. So we can see the UI. So whatever the UI is displayed, that we can see. But if I enter some data after clicking on submit button, what is happening? So whatever data we are entering here, that data will be captured by this component, and in this component there will be some logic. Okay, that logic is take care of inserting or updating or deleting data into the database. Okay, so that is a middle layer. So how the data will be stored in the database side. But initial days when databases are not there, initially the data will be stored in the text files. So text format, if we go for any text file, we can put some data there and save it. That is called as file format. That is called as a file format. This is the first way of storing the data. Files, the data will be stored on the files. And what is the problem if I store the data into the files? What is the problem here? We cannot manage data properly. So if I want to store some employee data here, how we can store? I cannot divide as a rows and columns, right? So this will be this normal static way. I cannot, suppose here, if I want to store some data, EMP ID or EMP name or EMP, okay, salaries. If I store data like this, suppose employee number 101, suppose ABC, or salary is 5,000. So if I want to store the data like this, so what is the problem here? So this is called unstructured data. Unstructured data. So if I store data in the files, we cannot access the data using some queries. So we cannot access. Suppose if I want to only get the particular employee information, or if I want to get the employee data whose salary is more than some number, if I want to do some kind of, if I want to retrieve some kind of values or some kind of data from the application or database, that is not possible in text files. Okay, and also moreover, this is unstructured data. We cannot say this is structured kind of data. Okay, accessing data and putting the data into the files is very difficult task. That is the main problem in the file system. So the data storage concept initially comes from the file system. So the data will be stored on the files, basically files. And later point of time, what they have done is they have implemented a concept called DBMS concept, database management system. Database management system. So how DBMS will organize? Here, data will be stored on the format of tables. So how the data will be stored like this? Suppose employee ID is one column, employee name is column, salary is column, and within the columns we can store any number of data into the tables. So we can store the data into the tables, okay, and static tables. Whatever data we are passing from that application, that will be stored on the tables. So this is called as a DBMS concept, database management system. So basically DBMS is a theoretical concept, database management system. What is database here? Collection of tables is called as a database. Database doesn't have not only one table, it contains many number of tables. Okay, if I take any banking application, for example, we have a customer table, and also we have a transaction table, also we have an administration table. Each table contains its own data. For example, if I take a transaction table, it contains only the transaction data. So what it contains usually, who is sending the money or who is receiver, and what the amount they have sent, okay, in which time they have sent. So that kind of the transaction ID, so that kind of information will be stored on the transaction table. And if you go for the customer table, the customer table contains the customer information. So what is the customer name, customer mobile number, customer email ID, customer address, what is his balance, right? So that kind of information will be stored on the customer table. So each related information will be stored on the related tables. So all the tables together we can call as a database. Database, not DBMS. All tables we can call as a database. To managing the database, so how to manage this database? Okay, we have some tables in the database. How to manage them? What is the managing of database? Managing of the database in the sense, whenever we want to insert some data, we should able to insert the data through application. And also whenever I want to update some employee data or update some data in the tables, I should able to do that. And also whenever I want to see some report kind of stuff, suppose if I provide some transaction number, you can get all the details, right? When you did the transaction and what amount you have transferred. So that kind of information you will get from the database when you provide the transaction ID. So whenever you want to select some data from the database, you should able to do that type of transaction. So these are all kinds of activities, all comes under the management. Okay, inserting data, updating data, deleting data, or retrieving data from the database. So these kind of all activities are called as a database management system. Database management system, right? So then how we can do the database management? So how we can store the tables and how we can update the tables, right? How to delete the tables or how to select the data from the tables. So these all activities we have to do. For that, we have some softwares called database softwares, DB softwares, right? So the softwares will support to do these activities called as databases, right? Inserting, updating, and retrieving the data, right? Or selecting the data. So if we want to do these kind of activities, we need some software. That software is called as a database. Okay, so what is a file system and what is the DBMS? What is the database? You're clear now? File system, the data will be stored in the unstructured format. So we cannot apply all kinds of activities on the file system. That is not a flexible way. So that they have implemented new concept called as a DBMS, database management system concept. So DBMS says this is a basically simple management system. So how to manage the database, those concepts it will tell. So how to manage the database means in which way we will manage the database while inserting data, updating data, retrieving data, right, and deleting data. So these are all management activities. If I want to do those kind of activities, we need one software. That software is called as a database software. And later point of time in DBMS also there is some limitations. For example, in DBMS, in database management system, if you have multiple tables, suppose if you have number of tables in database management system, right? If I want to do some activities here, okay, so whatever data I'm inserting here, that data can be stored in one table or multiple tables, right? So not only one table, not on a single table, it can be stored in multiple tables. When I retrieve the data from the database, again the data we will get from the multiple tables. So in this case, there should be a relationship between the tables. There should be a relationship between the tables. So in DBMS concept, the related data, for example, employee table is there, okay, and also I have department table is there, two tables. Usually employee table contains the employee data, right? So for example, employee ID, employee name, salary, designation, hire date, salary, okay, these kind of information will be stored in the employee table. And there is a department table, it contains the department number and department name, department number and department name. So what is the relationship between these two tables? If I enter the employee data from that application, the data is directly stored in the employee table. And if I enter the department data from the application, that will stored in the department table. Okay, so for example, if I want to retrieve the data from both the tables, for example, I want to get some employee data who is working on the specific department. Okay, so but in EMP table there is a department number is there, but department name is not there. But in department table we have a department number and also we have a department name. But if I want to get the employee who is related to particular department name, how we can get the data? So the query should refers to the two tables in this case, right? We cannot get the data only from one table because employee table having only basic information. Only we have a department number, but department name is not there. If I want to get department name apart from the department number, again I should relate to employee table to the department table. So the relationship has to be there. Without relationship, employee table will be the different and department table will be the different. There is no relationship. We cannot get the exact data, right? So this relationship should be there between the database objects or database tables. So later point of time, what they have done is on top of DBMS, they have implemented new concept called as RDBMS, relational database, RDBMS, relational database management system. So RDBMS is an advanced concept of DBMS, right? So whatever the limitations are there in the database management system, they have fixed those problems, and later time they introduced RDBMS software, relational database management system. So there are some software which are examples for DBMS, only DBMS part, and there are some examples of software which supports RDBMS. Okay, this is the overall idea of what is the file system, what is DBMS, what is database, and what is RDBMS. Okay, now we will see small definition. So first we will talk about what is database. Okay, so how we can define the data? It is collection of meaningful data. This is the definition of database. It is a collection of meaningful data. Or we can have one more definition. This is one definition. One more definition is it is group of objects. What is an object here? Table is one object. Basic entity of the database is a table. By default, the data will be stored on the tables, right? So table is one object. After that, there will be some more different object called views. We will discuss everything in the next classes. Okay, table and views. Okay, and the functions, UDFs, we can call it as a UDFs, user defined function, or procedure, okay, or trigger, so etc. So these are all called, also we have a synonym. This is called as a synonym. So these are all called different kinds of database objects. So one more definition is, it is a group of objects. So like table, views, synonyms, UDFs, procedures, triggers, everything is an object as part of database. So database is a collection of meaningful data. And what is the DBMS? Database Management System. So DBMS is management system. This is a definition actually, okay? DBMS is management system which manages the database objects and data as well. Database object and as well database. So what are the activities? So what are the database activity in DBMS point of view? We can create the objects, and we can inserting the data into the objects, and also we can deleting the data into the objects, deleting data from the objects, and also we can retrieve or select data from the objects, right? So these are all different kinds of activities we can do on top of DBMS. So if you want to do these type of activities, we need a database softwares. So what is the database software? So database software is a software. Using that software we can perform these type of activities. The software is used for doing DBMS or RDBMS activities. The software is used for doing DBMS and RDBMS activities is called database. So now DBMS. So what is basically DBMS is a database. It has a group of objects, but there is no relationship between the objects. Every table is independent, but later time point of time they have introduced RDBMS concepts. This is called relational database management system. Relational database management system. So what it contains? It establishes the relationships between the database objects. That is called RDBMS. And what are the different databases are available in the market? What are the different examples? So if you go for only DBMS, examples are MS Access. MS Access is a Microsoft product. MS Access you will by default you will get with the MS Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. After that you can see the MS Access. That is a one software used for DBMS. And in olden days there is a software called DBase, and also there is a software called Fox Pro. So these are all very old, almost 15 years, 20 years back softwares. MS Access, DBase and Fox Pro, these are all only DBMS related software. Initially the database concept is started from these softwares, and later time they have introduced RDBMS concept. So what are the databases example for RDBMS? DBMS. So from RDBMS the databases become very much popular. Okay, so example, Oracle is a RDBMS software, and also MS SQL Server, This is one more software, RDBMS software, and DB2. This is IBM. Oracle is software. The company is also called Oracle. Okay, the Oracle is a product of Oracle, and MS SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server. This is a Microsoft database, and DB2 is an IBM product. This is IBM developed, IBM database. And apart from this, we have so many other softwares. MySQL. This is free source. We can easily download and install in our machine. This is free source, remaining are all license based. Okay, and MySQL, and also we have Sybase, and also we have Teradata, right? So Teradata, so etc. These are all databases comes under the RDBMS software, relational database management systems. Oracle, MS SQL Server, IBM DB2, MySQL, Sybase, and Teradata. So this is one generation. Okay, MS Access, DBase, Foxborough, these kind of databases are there in one generation. In initial days, later point of time, they have introduced RDBMS softwares called Oracle SQL Server. This one. Okay, and if you see this one, in both the DBMS and RDBMS, data will be stored as a structured format in the form of tables or views, synonyms, everything. In RDBMS also the data will be stored in the structure format. But still there are limitations in the RDBMS. So what are the limitations in the RDBMS? So in RDBMS, if you want to store the data, where we can store the data? In hard drives, in tables, right? In the tables, in the sense, hardly say the tables are exist in the hard drive, right? So based upon the size of the database, whatever the size we allotted to particular database, that much data we can store on the database. So if I want to store more data, it should not be any limitants there. So what kind of mechanism we should use? So later time, what they have done is they have introduced one more concept called as a big data concept. This is called big data. Nowadays, this is a very much popular concept. I think you heard this word, big data. So what is big data here? So I'll show a small example here. I have one database. Okay, this is called one normal database, RDBMS software. I have client applications, many client of applications. This is one application. This is one applications. They are doing some activities against the database. They are inserting, updating, deleting data, everything. Now at a certain time, after certain time, what will happen is, for example, in this database, I have allocated some space called 1 TB. 1 terabyte space I have allocated to this particular database. After 1 TB is completed, so whatever the data we are doing from that application, what will happen? That data cannot be stored on the database. The memory is full. Memory is full. So then what will happen? The client side, you will get some error, like we don't have the space on the database side. So we don't know when this will become full. We don't expect how much data will come from the client, right? So in this case, what they can do is they have introduced one more concept on top of this table. This is again RDBMS, relational database management system softwares like Oracle, SQL Server, etc., etc. And what they have introduced is they have introduced a new concept called Hadoop Big Data. Hadoop Big Data concept. So what this will do is this will have many number of nodes at the back end. Nodes in the sense again servers. Okay, and first it will receive the data in the database first. So it will check the space. If there is a space, the data will be stored here. If there is no space at all, or data is related to the different thing, for example, in this I can store, for example, if you go for any company, there are so many departments are there. So for example, sales department, account department, and admin department. Assume that there are 3 different departments are there. All kind of tables are stored in one place. Okay, so if I want to retrieve the data, what will happen if I want to retrieve some sales information, right? Where the sales information stored? On sales database and account database or admin database, right? It searches for all kinds of tables in this particular database and it will retrieve. But if I want to store each database in different machines. For example, here I will store the sales, here I will store the account data, and here I will store the admin data. So what will happen, whenever I get the query, immediately we will check the query which department and send that query to the appropriate server. What will happen now, there is no conflict between the data, and also searching will be very much faster. And if this particular server is become full, automatically the data will be pushed into the whichever node is free in that particular network. So this is again little advanced concept than RDBMS concept. Okay, this is all called Hadoop and big data. So here the examples are Hive, okay, and there is HBase, and also there is a software called Pig. Okay, so these are all little advanced. Nowadays, recently they came into the market. Okay, this is moreover than the RDBMS. Okay, so basically this is the theoretical concept. So what is the database, what is the DBMS, and what are the different activities we can do as part of DBMS. If we want to do these activities, we need a software. So that software is called as a database software. The examples are this one: Oracle, SQL Server, IBM DB2, MySQL, Sybase. So except MySQL, all other databases are license based. But still Oracle and MS SQL Server you can download and install on your machine. If you install a professional version, if you download professional version, that doesn't require any license key. Okay, you can install and work. I'll show that also. Okay, so this is basic information. So what is SQL then? Structured query language. Structured query language. Structured query language. So every database having two kinds of components. Every database is having the two kinds of components. DB, database, is divided into two kinds. One is database server. One is called database server, and another one is called database client. DB client. So if you install any database softwares, you will get these two kinds of components. One is DB client, another one is called database server. Let me explain this. Every database contains two kinds. One is DB client and second one is DB server. So what is the purpose of DB client and what is the purpose of DB server? So see this. DB client is different, this component is different, okay, and application is again different. So if I'm talking about only database, if you install database in your machine, you will get these two, database client and database server. So these two no need to be in the same machine. Database server can be in a different machine and database client will be present on the different machine. Okay, there is no rule like both should be present on the same machine. But if you install database server, you will get automatically client also. But if you install only client, you will not get the database server. That is there. Okay. In real time, in companies, what they will do is they will install database server on the remote machine, and they will install client, database client on all users. So in company, for example, there are 5 users are working. 5 database users are working, but 5 machines they won't install database. They will install exact database is one machine in server. This is called database server, and in each machine they will install only database client. So using database client, they will connect to the same database. And do the same activities. So this is one way. Other way is if you install database, automatically you will get the database server plus also client, DB plus client, both you will get. But if you install only client, while installation it will ask you want to database server or you want to install only client. If you select database server, you will get database server plus client. But if you select only the client, you will get only the client. You will not get database server. So if you install only the client, you cannot work with the database. If you install complete database, then you will get the client as well as you can work with the database. Okay, so this is a scenario actually. So what is DB client and what is database server? This is very, very important again. So whatever we talk about the database objects like tables, views, synonym, users, procedures, triggers, right? So these are all objects will be stored on some place. If I want to store them in one place, they require some space in the memory, right? So that memory will provided by the database server. So all objects will be stored on database server. It can be table, store, procedure, triggers, functions, everything, whatever you do against the database, everything will be stored on the database server side. So this is called as a storage area. Storage area. Okay. And this is responsible for storing area. We have to allocate some space for here, for some space to this while installation. And what is database client? Suppose in database server, the data will be stored on the different format in the table structure, or again internally table is again encrypted format. We cannot exactly see the data, whatever data is stored on the database side. We cannot see exactly physically. We cannot even understand the data, where it is stored, why it is stored, how much it's stored. We cannot assume that. Just it will show that it will store the data in the database. Even if you see the text file, so if I write something here, if I save this file, in the user perspective, what we will think, okay, this text file is having this much of data. This data we are able to understand. But internally memory perspective, the complete data will be stored in the machine language, that bits and bytes format. Okay, that we cannot understand. But whenever we want to open the file, when you open the file, again that will convert as a normal English format, and then only we can understand the data. In the same way, in database perspective also, if you install or if you send some data to the database, the data will be stored on the database in different kind of language. Okay, inside. We cannot see or we cannot modify that particular data in the database side. If you want to see the data, or if you want to do some modification, or if you want to do some insert or delete or update, we need a client software. We need to see first, right? We need to display the records, or we need to delete the records, or we need to insert the data. So if you want to do these particular operations, we need a client software. We need a client software. In the same way, for example, if you go for any banking application, we will get some client application, right? So there we need to enter login, username and password. Then we need to enter some receiver, sender, amount, transfer. So these kind of information we are entering, right? So that is UI kind of stuff. That is a client. So whatever the place we are interacting with the database, that is called as a client, right? So basically the client is used for the connecting to the database and do some kind of activities against the database. That is all about the client. And exactly where the data will be stored, but the data will be stored on the database server. Okay, so if you install database server completely, you will get the client also in same machine. But if you install only client, you will not get the database server. But you still need a database server which is installed on the remote location. In real time, that is a scenario. In real time, 50 employees are working, but 50 employees is 15 times they won't install database servers because the size will be very much used and those many licenses they don't have. So they will purchase one database license, they will install that database into the database one server, and remaining all machines, they will install the clients because client is free. Client is free, but database will be cost. Okay, so they will install the client applications or client software in all the machines. They will interact through client to the database, but again all are connecting to the same database, but they are using different clients. Okay, so every database having the client as well as a database server. So now what is database client and the server? DB client is an interface used for connecting to database. connecting to database. And one more important thing is database client can again will be the two modes. One is CLI mode, command line interface, and also GUI mode, graphical user interface. When databases are introduced in the market in initial days, there is only the CLI part. Command line interface. What is command line interface? We can execute all the commands only through command line. For example, if you go for here, DOS prompts, right? Just a moment. So if I see here, if you open the CMD, this is the command prompt. So if I type dir here, what will happen? It displays all the files, right? So in even Windows also, we can do every operation using a command prompt, or we can do just like a mouse UI part, right? If I want to see some files, what are the files exist in the C drive, just to navigate to the C drive, you can see all the files here. But if you want to do the same thing using command prompt, so navigate to cd ... command. Now I am on the C drive. Now if I print dir command, it will show all the files which are present in the C drive. This is called CLI, command line interface. And this is called, whatever we are using Windows, this is called GUI interface, right? So in this way, for every database client, it can be a CLI mode or it can be a GUI mode. Every database client having both CLI as well as GUI. Okay, and if I use CLI mode, we have to know all the commands. We have to remember all the commands. Everything should be as a command. We need to type everything. And if you go for the UI part, there also we can use commands, plus we can do some navigation using mouse operations. Just we can like create a table, or just we can write simple insert statement in the UI part. Okay, it will show some interface. So for example, if I go for a SQL developer, is a UI interface. So SQL developer, this is a one client, database client, used for connecting to the database. Suppose it is purely UI. So we can see all the tables, databases, what are the different objects are present in the database. Everything we can see using this client. But using command prompt, if I want to do the same things, we have to type some command. So otherwise we cannot see the data in the database. So this is called CLI client and this is called GUI client. So if I open SQL developer, this is one of the Oracle client. Okay, and see this. These are all the different database connections I have created. Okay, so these are suppose if I want to connect, if I want to see these properties of this, so these are all the data values. So what is this IP and port, and this is information about the exact database where the database will be installed in the some remote location. I don't have the database in my local. I have only the client I have local. But if I want to connect to the database which is remotely located, I need to provide that machine address, and also I need to provide the port of the database and SID, and then username and password. Then I can connect. If I click on connect operation, simply this will connect to the database. But still I am in the local machine. The client is in the local machine. But still it is connecting to the remote database. Just a moment. Okay, this is not able to connect. I'll use a different database. See this, if you see the connection properties, these are connection properties. Okay, so now if I click on this, not protection diffused. Okay, we'll go for this test. See, this connection is success. If I click on the connect, you can expand this tree. Once connection is successful, if I expand this tree, see this, you will get the UI. So here you can create all your select statement, insert statement, update statement, all the commands we have to provide from the UI side. Also, if you see the right side, you can see the tables. So how many tables are present in this database, and these are all called as tables. These are all tables are created in the database. And also views, indexes, packages, procedures, functions. So these are all called database objects. So this is a UI part. This is a UI client, GUI client. So if you want to go for the CLI client, if you install only Oracle, you will get the CLI client also. If you go for the application development, application development. See this SQL plus. This is a command prompt. If I open this, you will get the command prompt. Here you need to enter username and the password, then it will connect to the command. So there you need to enter all the commands. So there are two types of clients are there for the database. One is CLI part and another is GUI part. Okay. Now DB client is an interface used for connecting to the database. It can be CLI command line interface or graphical user interface, GUI graphical interface. And what is a DB server? So DB server is a storage area where the database objects and data will be stored. Got my point? So this is a database client and database server. So what is SQL here? Structured query language. See this. Okay, we have a database server. Okay, so we have a database server. Okay, this is located. This is called database server. And also we have a database client. It can be GUI or CLI. So now I have some table here. Okay. So now through client, if I want to insert some data into the table, I should give some command here. I should give some command like insert command I should give. If I provide an insert command, the command what they will do is whatever data we are specifying here, the data will be sent to this particular database and stored into the table. So what is insert command here? Insert is a command. It is that the database can be understand, right? So update is a command, and also delete is one command, select is one command. So these are all the commands the database can understand, right? Only these commands the database can understand. Other than this, if I specify any other keywords or else our own language, database cannot understand. So whatever the database is understand, the language, that is called as database language. That is called structured query language. Structured query language. So structured query language is as a language which is understandable by all the database. So we have a Oracle database, we have a SQL Server database, we have a DB2 database. For all the database, the SQL is a core. This is a common language. If I write insert statement in Oracle, the same insert statement will work on SQL Server, and also same insert statement will work on the DB2. Why? Because SQL is a core language for all the databases. So if you learn SQL for Oracle, the same SQL will work for the SQL Server as well as DB2. Apart from the SQL, there is a concept called PL/SQL, procedural language. So this is again programming concept. So if you want to do some programming stuff, we need to depending on the PL/SQL. This is a little advanced than SQL, but this will be changed. This will be changed from database to database. If you learn PL/SQL, that is only for Oracle, but for SQL Server there will be a concept called TSQL, transactional SQL. So this part will be changed to database, but SQL is a common language for every database. That's what, if you learn SQL, you can interact or you can work with any database. You can work with the SQL Server, you can work with Oracle, DB2, Sybase, Teradata, whatever database will be there in the company, the same SQL will work against the database. So SQL is a language used for interacting with the database objects. We use it to talk some language to the database. So database can understand only the SQL. That's what this is called, structured query language. So we are giving the simple English statement, just insert into some table some data, or select some employee number ID from employee table. Simple English statement which can be understandable by the database. So those statements, those commands are part of SQL, structured query language. Okay, so the SQL, what is SQL now? SQL is a language SQL is a language used to communicate with the database objects. So database can understand only the SQL language. This is a common for again all the databases. This is common for all the databases. Okay, now this is overall a theoretical concept. So what is the database? What is the DBMS? What kind of activities we can do as part of DBMS? And what is the database software? Right? So what is DBMS and RDBMS? Examples of RDBMS. And what is the database? DB client and DB server. So DB client is an interface used for connecting to the database. It can be either CLI mode or GUI mode. And DB server is a storage area where the database objects and data will be stored. As I said, if you install database, you get two components. While installation itself, it will ask either you need installation client or you need installation the server. If you install the server, you will get, if you try to install the server, you will get server plus client. Both will be present in the same machine. But if you install only the client, you will have only the client. You will not get the server. It will not be there. But if you want to work with the database server should be present because that is the exact storage area. Right? So these are all theoretical part. Now, throughout the SQL, we will fully concentrating on the Oracle part. Okay. So now if you learn the SQL, then later you can work with the SQL Server, DB2, whatever you want. Okay. I will show you Oracle. Throughout the SQL learning, I will use only the Oracle and then I'll show the SQL Server. Okay. Same thing how we can do in the SQL Server also. That is very important thing.